Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the DeakHeads podcast. My name is Rob Delves. As always, I'd like to introduce Sean Jessamine and Damon Bednarski. Firstly, g'day to you, Sean. How are you, mate?
Good, thank you, Rob. How are you?
Yes, good, thanks, mate. Just a little bit more excitement from you, Sean, would be great. Damo, up in Sydney, how are things going up there, mate? Have you got a snorkel out?
Oh, we actually played some cricket yesterday, mate. The sun was out, and it's been sunny again today. So, snorkel's gone back in the suitcase. Happy going up here.
Well, are you still on the dog stick, mate? You still throwing that around, or
dog stick, offies, whatever's required up here, mate. It's all in at training at the Renegades.
Mate, you might get like a promotion as some sort of technical or assistant coach.
I don't think so, but...
But how's the feeling around the group, though? It's been good that you've actually got yourself on the park this week.
Yeah, it was good. Results haven't really gone our way in the games that we have played, so the mood's down a little bit. But, I think people were just keen to actually play some cricket, which is what we're up here for, and did quarantine for and all those things. So, despite the results not going our way, it's been enjoyable to actually play some cricket.
Yeah, outstanding. And it looks like that you've got some mail up in Sydney as well. You look like you must have got a couple of parcels there because you're wearing some familiar items.
Yeah, the Merch King sent me the TRIAX performance T-shirt, which I've been wearing around shamelessly within the hub, getting a few questions and queries. So merch sales might be up, boys, and just a little cap there. So, a bit of self-promotion, which has been commented on amongst the group. So probably a couple of fines headed my way, I think.
Oh, that's outstanding. And, of course, they were sent up by the resident Merch King. If you've ever seen The Longest Yard, Sean is probably like caretaker in terms of the merch. He's the one who sort of sets up. He's probably not as well connected, even though he's from Pakenham, in terms of maybe some inappropriate dealings. But he is the Merch King. So, Sean, in terms of the merch, mate, I think that we've got some pretty good feedback and have put a merch order in. Can you please elaborate?
Yeah, we have. We've had lots of people showing interest, which has been great. We've been very appreciative and feeling very grateful that everyone's wanted to get on board the merch. We put that order in, and hopefully should have them very soon, and we can start to hand them out, and everyone can start repping the TRIAX brand and getting our name out there for some promotion of us.
Geez, you're happy with it too, aren't you? You're really happy with it.
Well, it was a lot of pressure, because if you get it wrong, then I knew that you two were going to let me know about it because you've given me this merch nickname. But they've come up well, and we've had some good feedback. So we're good. We're golden.
You hear that, Damo? We've given him the merch nickname. He gave himself the nickname.
I don't think I've ever called myself merch, and I've never been like,
Rob. Your behaviours have earned you the nickname, though. I will say, though, Shawnee, you are very good at your job, because I think I asked you to send it up, and Australia Post at the moment with COVID, it was here within about 24 hours. So
yeah, it was actually quicker than I thought.
Yeah,
fantastic
work.
I can't claim fast delivery of the contents that was sent up to you, but I'll tell you what, I got onto it quick, and I'm just glad you're able to wrap it up there, Damo.
It would have been nice if you threw a bottle of wine or something in with the quarantine system that we've got here at the hub. But anyway, thank you.
I bet you any money you like, Sean would not have forked out to pay for Express Post either. It would have been just, hopefully this gets up there before the end of the year. Yeah, exactly right, mate. Exactly right.
Take it out of the business expenses.
Yeah. Firstly, let's move on a bit more of some serious stuff here, fellas. But thank you to everyone who's checked out our previous podcast episodes. I think we actually get a lot of enjoyment out of making these, and even get even more so levels of enjoyment when we hear some feedback from the episodes we've had. So we appreciate everyone that's sort of given us some good support and feedback from them. It's much appreciated. You can find all the previous podcasts on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, as always. If you want to check out the screencast, you can do so on YouTube. And if you can leave comments, ratings, questions, anything like that, we'd be happy to answer them and field any queries you might have. But that brings us into the topic of this podcast. And there's a big milestone that's about to happen, particularly in Victoria, boys. And thankfully, to the declining COVID numbers here in the great state of Victoria, we can start opening up the gyms again. So that is a massive milestone in itself and is very important, not only for athletes, but for the general population as well. Like, it's been a long time for people in the community of Victoria to actually be in a gym. So it's quite a milestone that's coming up. So, boys, why don't we talk about the gym, hey? Getting back into the gym. Maybe you just talk about a bit of background information and some of the important stuff we want to cover in this podcast. So, Sean, you want to open us up?
Yes, I suppose it won't really, the little discussion we're going to have here, it won't really be about how to sort of approach your return to the gym. We sort of spoke about that a little bit in our second podcast episode about a sort of a return to sport, and the same principles apply there. And it's not really going to be, we're not going to sit here and tell you what exercises to do or how many sets and reps and all that sort of things, because there's plenty of ways to skin a cat, and we could sit here for hours and talk about the different things of combinations you could do. Damo actually does have a very good blog article on our website. It sort of gets into more of the nuts and bolts of resistance training. If you want to check that out, TRIAXperformance.com.
There's the first
plug.
Yeah,
today's
it wasn't even his own either.
Today's going to be more some overarching principles, I guess you could call them, about how to sort of get the most out of your gym sessions, and just some sort of things and tips and guidelines to follow to get the most out of your gym sessions once you are allowed back in. Easy.
And so, Damo, what in terms of overarching principles and what Sean was discussing, what sort of things do we mean by that? Just general discussion around that, if you could.
Yeah. So getting back in, obviously, it's about getting the body ready to do resistance training again. So, picking what type of training you're going to do. So obviously the F45s sorts of programs are very popular. But, a lot of people haven't been doing that type of exercise, the jumping, the moving sort of stuff that they have in their sessions. So making sure that your body is ready to do that sort of exercise. And I guess, as we've alluded to in the earlier podcast, that it's a slow and steady sort of wins the race process. So reintroduce yourself gently and slowly build yourself up from there in terms of the basics there of returning.
Absolutely. And Sean, so I think you had a point about this, about the F45 stuff and strength classes around that. Like, what might be more beneficial when we sort of jump back into it?
Yeah, so I think if you do go to a sort of fitness studio type gym like F45, that potentially when you do start back, maybe opt for their resistance training classes or their weights classes, as opposed to the sort of cardio circuit style classes. If you have been doing a little bit of training at home, maybe you could start just by doing one of those circuit classes a week and then gradually build it up. But a lot of the things that you would have been doing at home won't really be the same as those type of classes. A lot more jumping around and sort of higher intensity type activities that your body may not be as well prepared for. So again, it's a lot of the principles we spoke about in the second podcast episode, where you start off nice and slow and gradually build up to a point where your body can tolerate more of the loads.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about like the resistance training overarching principles, so obviously we're not going to come in and smash a power session first up, which is where we're aiming to lift maximal weight with maximal speed. So again, a bit of common sense. So in the article, and obviously in the earlier podcast, we're looking at introducing probably with hypertrophy training first, or muscular endurance, where you're looking at higher reps but lower weight. So introducing yourself to those movements again, and resistance. You may have done your home workouts and had a few weights around the house, but I can guarantee for anyone that has been lucky enough in Victoria to go back into a gym at some point and then being locked out again, which I think's happened to me. I was speaking to an S&C coach up here about 8 times now, where I've started a gym program for about 2 or 3 weeks, and you reintroduce yourself to the weights, and after the first 2 sessions you can't move because you haven't squatted with like a barbell or any weight. Even if you go low, your muscles are just not used to that resistance against them. So I'll harp on it about it a lot, but it's just to start slow and steady and work your way up. But it's reintroducing yourself to those movements.
Absolutely. And so there's a philosophy, or no, actually not a philosophy, that's probably the wrong word. There's probably a good comparison here. So when retail opened up in Victoria recently, if you were stupid enough like myself to go to Chadstone when you wanted to just to go to Kmart, you will realise that the influx of people there was like astronomical. The place was absolutely packed. And why? It's probably a psychological thing as well, because what happens is, when something's taken away for so long and, all of a sudden it's back, the floodgates just open. And look, that's going to happen at the gym as well. I think that's just human nature. And so Damo raised a couple of good points there, but one of them is that you probably don't, like, you might feel fresh going back into the gym. And so your mind is probably thinking, I can still bench this amount of weight, I can still squat this amount of weight, and all those sort of things. But really, you can't do that, because you probably not aware of your own sort of atrophy during this process or muscle loss to that degree. So in order to, Damon sort of touched on this already, but in order to sort of regroup that and come back into the fray, what are some of the specific things you want to do from that? Are we talking about full body sessions? Are we talking about split sessions still? Like, what sort of things do we want to incorporate then to help that transition back in?
I suppose that I wouldn't, when you do head back into the gym, it might be useful to start with full body sessions, and that might be something that you did beforehand anyway. So that's great. If you did more of a muscle group split or a upper lower split, upper and lower body split, you might again just start off with a full body instead of smashing one muscle group or one set of muscle groups. Start off with a full body, expose each part of the body to the resistance training again slowly, and then as your body gets more used to it, you can start to get in more volume per muscle group.
I think frequency of training is something to consider as well. So as Rob, you said, people rushing into Kmart, people are going to be rushing in to book in for every F45 session in a week, that their membership, or get into the gym at every day in a row. Again, if you're going from 0 resistance training sessions to 5 in a week, it's the same thing. Your body's not, you might feel fresh, but your body is going to quickly dwindle if you're doing that. So again, be smart, have a staged reintroduction to it. So doing, maybe 2 or 3 sessions, and then in the first week, and then maybe up it from there. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that, like what you said, the frequency, that's a massive one, because really, if you increase your frequency that drastic, then the people that are going to be most happy are probably your physio or your chiro, really, because the business is just going to be absolutely booming because of the amount of people that will just come in thinking that, I've got the bulletproof vest on, I can start benching whatever I want. So, yeah, the frequency, that from that point there, Damo, is huge. And then that probably ties into the fact that maybe we need to be realistic in what we are trying to achieve, particularly when we come back, and we have to realize that maybe the progress that we once had, or the levels of performance that we attained before this period, may not be there. So we have to sort of progress in a way that's not going to lead to impatience as well. So I think, Sean, this next point might come from you, because it seems like it's a bit of a slogan or a bit of a quote, but we want to talk about compounding interest of 1% improvements every day. Like, is this from that Atomic Habits book? Like, where is this from?
Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's from.
Oh, I knew it.
So if anyone that has read the book Atomic Habits, the author James Clear, he sort of talks about just getting that little bit better every day. And that's not to say that you need to go and exercise every day, because that's certainly not the message we're trying to portray here. But it's about putting in the work consistently, essentially, and that if you just continue to get a little bit better and a little bit better, eventually your sort of progress will increase, and in 6 months' time you're going to be up here compared to when you started, down here, as opposed to trying to smash yourself and make up for 6 months of lost gym workouts all in 1 month, because that's just unrealistic. And you're gonna, in the long run, your body's gonna end up cooked, and your body just won't agree with it. So if you just be consistent with it for a long enough time, and eventually the results will start to accumulate to a point where you'll start to see some results.
I thought you were going to start talking about the Barefoot Investor or something there when you're talking about compounding interest there, Shawnee. Thought I was on the wrong podcast for a second.
Mate, I was waiting for the name to drop because there's so many names that are just scattered on the floor lately in these podcasts from Sean. Like, he just keeps dropping them.
He's got the quote list above him.
Oh, yeah, there's something definitely there, I reckon. So maybe, Sean, it's still what Sean says is a great point, that, you want to look for that quick fix, because let's be honest, the quick fix didn't get you to where you were in the first place, and it's not going to get you back there now. So, definitely got to leave that impatience at the door. Particularly, it's like when you ran cross country as a kid. Like, I remember, there was that one kid that used to go flat out for the first 400, 500 meters and was flying, and then all of a sudden the legs are get a bit heavy. Yeah, there'll be no air left in the lungs, and then just fall back to the pack. That's what will happen in the gym if you keep pumping out the workouts in the first week. You'll soon be on the sideline. But once we get into the gym and we have a stable foundation from which to build upon, we then have to start going into this thing called progressive overload, which is a concept that many people who go to the gym will be familiar with. But maybe if we can just touch on implementing progressive overload after this extended period away from the gymnasium. Damo, if you want to kick us off here.
Yeah, so generally you'd probably be looking, depending on how much gym experience you have, it might be anywhere from sort of 2 to 4 weeks that you would need to be in that hypertrophy phase. And that might be very similar reps and sets those weeks, similar exercises. When you're then starting to look to overload that or move into, say, the strength and power phases, would be the 10% rule is something that I always sort of use. So you're changing one variable by 10%. So you might increase your reps and sets so that the total increases by 10%, or you're increasing your load. So if you're moving into strength, generally what will happen is you'll do less reps and you'll lift more weight. So each time you want to overload, that's going to be by a maximum of 10%. And that's how you're going to get those increases. Now, early doors, that's going to be those differences or the changes, and the overload is going to be quite big. You might actually be able to lift quite a bit more, and you'll see that you'll be able to progress week to week. But eventually those early progressions are going to start to decrease a little bit, and you might sort of hit the brick wall where there's no more. Diminishing returns is what it's often called, where you're actually not improving much at all anymore at that point.
Absolutely. And so, Sean, is it a good idea? Because what can happen is, if you're pretty disciplined in your workouts, you might get a bit bored or a bit disinterested in your workouts that you're doing. So should you maybe incorporate a bit of variety and jump between a few random workouts, or should you be more regimented in this period? Sorry,
it's a bit of a balance. Like, you should definitely, majority of the time, follow like a structured program, but for every now and then doing something different, whether it be just a completely different workout in general, or even a different type of exercise in general, just for some variety, that can always be beneficial to keep a bit of interest alive. But jumping between random workouts every single session probably isn't going to be too great for some long-term progress, because they can be enjoyable, and having that sort of random factor of never knowing what you're going to do. Some people find it entertaining. It's not like you won't make any progress, because you're still going to be able to get fitter and you might get a little bit stronger. But if you're not nailing the same type of exercises or the same type of workouts for at least 4 to 6 weeks, you're going to see, generally speaking, most of the time, you're going to see more improvement by following something structured.
Yeah, so it's all good with adding in a little bit of variety, but we can also do this by regressing and progressing exercises. So, your squat, your deadlift, those key movements, bench press, that sort of stuff. There's a bit of variety that you can actually have in that. So you can do different movements to target the same muscle groups and the same outcomes. So, you can front squat, you can back squat, you might use bands or different types of resistance and stuff like that to alter it or make it a little bit more difficult and add that variety to your session. So that might be they're the things that you can sort of use that when you're getting to that diminishing returns point, that you actually start adding in a few bits of variety that might be able to get you to start continue improving. So yeah, that's the thing. Variety is good. And as you said, Sean, that might be something that you might throw in once a week as sort of like a mix up session that you have where it's, sort of choose your own adventure is something that's quite common in elite sport where they get to sort of pick what they want to do on a particular day. And then the other days has their core lifts in there. So giving them variety, but then on those other days, you might just mix it up and go, all right, we're still going to do the squat, but we're going to do front squat today, or, squat to a bench or something like that, just to mix it up so that it's a different different thought pattern, I guess, but the stimulus of what you're actually trying to get out of it is the same. Yeah,
absolutely. So if Sean wants to still do his beach weight session, if he wants to do the upper body pump, he can still do that, just as part of a bit of an extra or a regimented program. Hey, Sean.
We all know you love a beach weights workout before a night out, don't you, Rob? You put the size small t-shirt on, and it's tight across the chest, tight across the arms, and you start walking out with watermelons under your arms through Swan Street in Richmond, and you go.
I think the listeners should know that Rob actually did order a shirt a size too small in the TRIAX department so that his pipes, when he's on camera, could be popping out.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely. In fact, it was too big, so I've had to put it through a dryer a few times actually. So just to get a nice fitted sort of job. But good quality merch though. You can't go wrong. So if you want to look a bit, if you want to look a bit ripped and muscly, then definitely give the tee a go. But thanks for that, boys. Thanks for just throwing me under that. That's good. All right. So when we've got the weight, boys, and when we're doing the exercises, there's always a couple of key cues that you need to follow, and internally you have to remind yourself to do them. And I think one that may be forgotten amongst the technique-based cues is the actual intent to move the weight. I think a lot of people will go through the motion of lifting the weight, but still may be lacking the intent to actually move it fast and with some intent behind it. So do we want to talk about that? Because I think that's something that people tend to forget when they're trying to focus too hard on the actual technique and the process that they're undergoing.
Yeah. So I suppose if you're going to be doing an exercise that you've never done before, that you're new to doing, then moving slowly while you actually learn the movement pattern, then there's no problem with that, and everyone's going to go through that. But when it comes to if you're doing your bench press or your squat and you're not moving as fast as you can, you're potentially leaving a little bit of progress out on the gym floor, because you may actually move the weights slowly purely because of how heavy they are. But if you're intentionally moving slowly when you don't really have to, then that's where you might not see as much progress, because essentially what we're trying to do by either moving fast as we can or putting as much force into our movements as we can is we're trying to recruit as many motor units from our brain and our spinal cord to the muscles, and essentially we want the big ones and the ones that move fast, and the only way to get them to move to your muscles is by trying to push things as hard as you can and trying to move things as fast as you can. That's all key to increasing your strength and your power. So if you're potentially not moving as fast as you can or not putting as much force as you can, then those motor units that you need to increase your strength or power, they're just not, you're not calling on them.
Absolutely. Damo, do you have any sort of technique cues that people can remember to remember to lift with intent? Is there any cues that you use in the gym at the moment that you provide to your clients or your athletes or whatnot, and how to move with intent?
Yeah, I guess one that's pretty, if you're doing a lower body exercise, is sort of driving the force through your feet, so like through your heels. So if you're squatting, that you want to actually like generate force that almost that you're imagining that you're trying to rip the floor apart, but also push through it as well. So like when you say rip the floor apart, it's that you're trying to just engage as many muscles and neurons as possible, but you want to be actually lifting with intent. So if you're trying to put a hole in the ground with your feet driving upwards when you're in a squat, and it's a heavy squat, it's obviously going to make moving the weight a little bit heavier. So that's probably one that's very common. If you've got someone that is a bit lax on moving and quite slow through the movement pattern, is that, either ripping the floor apart or trying to push through it, especially through the heels. So, drive the heels is probably one that's very common for me to use in the gym for a squat exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good one. So when the gym doors open, undoubtedly what's going to happen, and we've spoken about this previously, is that there may be some influences of people's ego that come into the gym door. And what we mean by that is, obviously, when you go to a gym, there's a lot of testosterone thrown about in terms of, people benching and all that sort of stuff. But in terms of your own personal ego, there is also and potentially a negative influence on that as well, and where you may become a slave to your own numbers and effectively trying to lift at the same rate at which you were before. So we sort of discussed this already, but maybe if we can talk about the influence of the ego on this process about returning to the gyms, boys.
Yeah, so I wouldn't, day one, gyms are open, I wouldn't be walking in there trying to lift the same weights that you did 6-8 months ago, because really your body and your muscles, they don't know what weight you're lifting, only your ego does. So there could be, I don't know, 20, you just be squatting with the barbell, but finding it pretty tough, as opposed to if you were doing, I don't know, 60, 80 kilos beforehand. And that's probably to be expected, to be honest. It's not a bad thing. None of us have been in a gym for the last 6-8 months. So you're going to take a few steps back. And so just take it day by day, where you're find your starting point, and it might take you a few sessions to work out where you're at. But then once you've sort of get a good idea, you can slowly start to build from there. And your progress, it isn't going to be linear. It's not always going to go up and up and up. You're going to have some good days and some bad days. Overall, you want to be trending up, and hopefully that's what you will be. But don't be afraid to drop the weights for a session or two, or if you're feeling shit, or you're just not feeling up to it, or your body's just not responding to how it might normally respond, because you haven't been in the gym for so long, and it's going to take some time to get used to it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the thing. There's going to be someone there that's just huge when the first time you go into the gym, and they're just going to be picking up massive weights. I think that's the most important thing, is to just not be, concerned or afraid to, go the dumbbells rather than the barbell the first day back or something like that. Or just, only lifting the bar with a few plates either side, just so that you get back into it. And I think one major thing is technique. So obviously you haven't done this for quite a while. So if you're jumping back in and jumping on heavy weights, but your bench technique's crap because all you've done is push-ups for the last 6 months because you've been at home, or you've only been squatting with your body weight, and so you add some weight and your technique's off, is that really that's the most important thing. If you can get the technique right back and you can load up a little bit, then everything's just going to start to slowly build up and you'll be back on track. But if you load yourself up, you've got shit technique, and you're just lifting poorly, and then you just feel like crap, it's just going to be a long slog. If you continually keep doing that, yes, you might get some improvements slowly, but it's just going to be a shit time for you returning to the gym. So if you can just, like we said earlier, just leave the ego at the door and just not be too concerned about the guy that is in there lifting huge weights. He's probably had a gym at home the entire time and hasn't stopped. Just remember what you've done and your preparation going in and what will work for you. Obviously, as we said, it's not going to take that long. You give it a week or two and you'll be back to pretty close to sort of what you were doing if you train properly. If you don't do it properly, you're going to be sore. You're going to take a lot longer to do it. You may lose interest in it pretty quickly as well. So slow and steady wins the race, as I've said, and just leave that ego at the door for the first couple of sessions, and then you can be like Rob and try to beat your bench PB after 2 or 3 weeks back in the gym.
Or you can be like Rob and actually design your own homemade bench press for the last 6 months so you don't lose any gains. Well, actually, if you're on the YouTube screencast, there's a photo up actually of that homemade bench press, so you can have a look at that. Definitely not OH&S safe, but it did the job. So there we go. But Damo, and just touch on a point there, Damo, as well, is that your progress isn't linear as such either. You will have good days and bad days. I'm not sure. Progress isn't linear? Is that in the Atomic Habits book as well, Sean, or not?
Oh, it might be that, but that was just something that I rattled off. I may have read it from somewhere, but it's not something that I consciously stole from anywhere, like I do most of my other points.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Maybe you don't actually know it's yours anymore. Like, it's just I think there's been a bit from column A, a bit from column B, and then all of a sudden you put your name to it. But but definitely realise that there's going to be good days and bad days, particularly after you play your first week in, when you're feeling a bit sore. Definitely don't be discouraged by any drop in performance you may have. But as Damo said, and as Sean said as well, maybe have a bit more emphasis on your technique, because you can add as much weight and resistance to your current technique at the moment. But if it's no good, then you'll be probably going to the physio clinic rather than the gym in greater frequency. So make sure you really hammer the techie. There we go. But so the last part of this podcast, though, is something that we all really wanted to touch on quickly, because it's a massive component of people going to the gym, and that is the idea. Well, that is the product of supplements or supplementation. So we all know supplements are massive in the gym. Basically it's an industry. Effectively, it's a money-making industry that companies use to basically make some money, and it's marketed to the nth degree, and essentially it's promoted to the public that it's essential as water in order for you to improve. And so we felt it was pretty important that we speak about the supplements and what you actually need and what's basically just marketing spin. So maybe, Sean, if you want to kick us off in terms of supplements and some of the pitfalls around that.
Yeah, so I suppose any supplements that you're going to get, they should be to help you out if you can't achieve the required nutrients from your diet and your food intake. So I think the most common one that you'll see out there will be protein, and there's all different types of protein, and this is always good from a muscle building perspective. And some people will get plenty of protein in their diet to begin with. Some people won't, and you can either do it to get to that required level or just get that little bit extra. There's not really a lot of harm in getting too much unless you're consuming stupid amounts. But if you're not, but on the other hand, if you're not consuming enough, then that's where there's probably more of a problem, because you won't get that sort of, particularly if your goal is to pack on some more muscle, you might struggle a little bit with that then.
Adding to that is that these supplementation companies and stuff like that are going to recommend that you buy, their protein powders, and there's 1,000 different ones out there with different proposed benefits. Obviously, you can get most of it from your diet. So if you eat a lot of, protein, so meats, lentils, different things like that, obviously you're going to get quite a bit. But if you do, as Sean alluded to, want to get that extra edge, obviously you can buy protein powder, but there are other options out there. So there's a lot of like protein based drinks. So if you're looking at sort of milks and that's got a lot of natural protein in there as well. So, I mean, pick what works for you. So if you haven't previously done it, don't think you have to go out and buy a $250 container of protein powder, because that's going to be the answer for you. Try a few things. One of the things with like protein especially is that the taste and the consumption, it doesn't work for everyone. It's not the most tasty thing that you're going to have, but you can substitute that. So there's a lot of other drinks out there. Like, it's just even having milk itself. If you want to blend that in with some other like sort of protein powder that you can get that might be a bit cheaper, it might make it a bit easier to consume. Even there's been stories of people that have a big M or something after the gym because it's got a high amount of protein. Obviously, there's a lot of sugar in there, but depending on how much you've worked out as well, that's potentially going to give you a benefit as well. But I think the one thing that you should add is that we aren't trained to sort of provide advice on that either. So if you really are interested in supplements, so if it might be protein, it might be caffeine. A lot of people like to use that before training, creatine, these different supplements, is that you actually speak to a dietitian or a nutritionist, or as Rob's said before, the Sports Dietitians Australia actually is a really good website as a resource to go and just have a look on there what options that they have to recommend to use, because every time you go into a gym, it's going to have their product that they're sponsored by and that they get a cut out of if they sell that protein powder. So don't feel pressured to buy that one. Have a shop around, have a look around, see what options are out there for you before you drop a heap of money on that and then you don't like it. Yeah,
okay. So that's what Damo said is a really important point. So before you drop, so everyone just gather around, get in a tight huddle. Before you drop over $100 or $200 on any form of supplementation, please book yourself in to a dietitian or sports dietitian first. Because essentially, if you're willing to pay that amount of money for something you don't know whether that's appropriate for you or not, is essentially a gamble. So go actually book yourself in, get some personal one-on-one advice, and don't follow TikTok or Instagram or any of the people on there who have commercial and financial backing for them to promote that product to you. It may not be beneficial for you to take. And as we said, supplements in their basic definition are to supplement what you're already doing. So if you can't get your protein in because you're on the road, that's when you have a shake. Like, it's not something that you need. It's something that you use as a tool to help you get to where you want to go. And then, like Damo mentioned, creatine as well. Like, creatine's a good one because you see that all the time. That's, besides protein, creatine's the next one in line that gets flogged to an inch of its life. You know, all the boys in the gym say, nah, bro, you had your creatine, bro. You need that, mate. Like, you need to lift that constantly. But effectively, creatine's an interesting one as well, and you should read up on creatine before you have it, particularly. And the Sports Dietitians Australia, again, have a good fact sheet around that. But some people don't realise that creatine may help somebody or help someone achieve their goals more so than someone else. So, for instance, Damo might already have a higher naturally stored amount of creatine, so him taking supplementation might not actually do that much for him. Whereas if I don't really have a high amount of creatine stores at the moment, supplementation might help me, but effectively it might just help Damo put on weight. So you have to realize the fact that, you know, these supplements are essentially backed by companies that want to make money. So please do your own research on that and go through the appropriate channels. Do you have anything on that one, Sean, or have I just gone on a rant there? That's it.
I think, no, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I think the other thing to look out for is don't go buying it, as you said, Rob. Don't go buying anything that any Instagram influencers are spruiking on their accounts, because the only reason they're spruiking them is because they get paid when you buy them. So the detox teas and the fat blaster drinks and the meal replacement shakes and all that rubbish, just stay far away.
Yep. And again, we'll say it again for the people in the back that didn't hear me, or somebody, you know, on Spotify or whatever, go see a dietitian first. And then you can save yourself a lot of money in the long run. So do it. But we aren't sponsored by Sports Dietitians Australia. Say that. We're not getting kickbacks from SDA. I'll just tell you that right now. But that would be a funny coincidence. Yeah, but please do your own research on that one. But I think that's that probably sums up from the supplementation point of view, boys. Just make sure that do your own research and don't follow what somebody else is doing, because as we know, what works for somebody else doesn't work for someone else as well. So make sure you do your own research on that.
I think the only other thing to add is just you're not always aware of what you're actually having a lot of the times with these products. So if you are sort of in and around, you know, like more sub-elite or elite systems and you're trying to take stuff, just be careful as well, because there might be ingredients in there that you actually can't take as an athlete that are on the banned WADA list. They may not be particularly like performance enhancing, but they're definitely on the list of, items that you can't take. So if you are in that space, I'd advise you're probably going to be at a club or an organization that has a dietitian or a doctor that can advise on what you can and can't have.
All right. Well, I think that might do us for this episode of the podcast, boys. So I thank you two for your enthusiasm as always, and I'd like to thank everybody who has tuned in to the podcast thus far and has provided feedback, comments, subscribes, likes, everything along those lines. So we appreciate that. And again, if you have any questions or anything you'd like us to cover in future topics, then feel free to get in touch with us. Happy to answer any questions or field any inquiries that you may have. But thanks nonetheless for tuning in. But if people want to get in touch with us, Sean, how do they do that, mate? Via social media?
If you search for TRIAX Performance on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok, we can't forget the TikTok.
The talk.
You will find us there. You will see some of Rob's best work. He's slaving away on his phone. He's cramming notes in his notepad, thinking, "Gee, boys, I need some TikTok ideas. What do you got for me?" And Damo and I, we don't really have much because we don't really understand TikTok. So this is all Rob's doing. So make sure you check out the TikTok. Otherwise, get in touch with us on any of the other social media platforms.
Yeah, good stuff. Well done, Sean. Very humorous, mate. But then I'll be the one laughing when we get 100,000 views on a video and all of a sudden this thing just goes through the roof. And then you're like, oh, boys, how good's TikTok? How good's TikTok? And I'm like, yeah, boys, that's right. And Damo, so for a more formal means of communication, how do people contact us, mate, the old-fashioned way?
Yeah, so admin@triaxperformance.com is the email address, and the website, if you want to check out the resistance training blog as well. Self-promotion plug here. That's triaxperformance.com is where you should go and check out that blog.
Very good, Damo. Very seamless sort of plug there, but well done. So we'll catch you all next time on the DeakHeads podcast. Bye for now.